All right, today's video, I wanted to bring up 5 more concerns about parents who have borderline personality disorder. And I did one video about this, but I have 5 more. Instead of doing one long list of 10 total, right? I decided to break it up into 2. This list is probably more concerning to me than anything. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Scott Carter. I am a licensed therapist, and I've done primarily a lot of work with kids and teenagers over the years, and more I become concerned about the kids who develop significant issues at young ages because they have a parent who has a personality disorder. Narcissism, borderline are 2 of my primary concerns. I believe that these particular mental illnesses are more common than we want to believe. Some people get upset with me for saying that. I'm not exactly sure why. What if they do exist more than we want to believe that they do? We're not doing ourselves any favor by pretending that they don't, okay? Finishing off my green tea. And people have borderline, they get really upset with me online for talking about this stuff. They're angry about how I portray them. And to that, my response is, why should we worry more about you than children? I have a lot of concerns about borderline parents, but borderline parents, of course, always take the precedence. They always take the priority. They always expect to be the number one concern. They will expect to be the number one item on everybody else's list, even before children who are in distress, even before children who are suffering as a result of some of these parenting concerns. And again, that's just kind of the narcissism that we see coming out is we're supposed to be far more concerned about the borderline parent than we are the kids who are kind of on the receiving end of some of this. Without further ado, by the way, if you appreciate my content, if you find this helpful, you could really help me out and send me some love, send me some donations. It'll help keep this content going. If you have a question about any of this stuff and you want to send me an email and I like the question, I may feature it in a video if you would like. So let's advance these slides. Okay. All right. So they play heroes and villains with the kids. So this is my, if you're new here, these are my terms for devaluation and idealization, which is specific verbiage from the DSM-5 about borderline personality disorder. But I use the term heroes and villains. You're either a hero or you're a villain. And they do this with the kids, okay? And I have seen families where children are very much at war with each other because they're trying to get the approval of the narcissistic or borderline parent. They will throw each other under the bus. They will even sabotage each other, because there's an interesting dynamic that seems to happen is that when one kid becomes the villain, another one, it's like a seesaw. The other one naturally gets elevated, or whatever the dynamic may be in the family. I've even seen situations in families where the younger kids often end up kind of being the favorites. The younger kids are usually the most likely to develop a personality disorder on their own because they don't get the same type of treatment that the older kids get. But the younger kids, I've seen this before, where the younger kids are tattletelling a lot, snitching, elaborating, embellishing, exaggerating, getting the older kids in trouble, and then the borderline parent typically ends up supporting or reinforcing that behavior. Oh, good job, little Timmy, on telling on your older brothers and sisters, those bad children. They end up playing favorites, heavy favorites. Do they do this deliberately? I don't believe so. I don't think they plan to do this. But I have seen situations sort of based on, like, for example, the gender of the child. Maybe the borderline mom favors the daughters over the boys and hates the boys because she believes that men are evil or whatever. That is a specific example that I've encountered. Not necessarily happens a lot, that particular scenario, but the borderline parent usually ends up playing favorites. Sometimes you get a kid who is a lot more strong-willed and a lot more rebellious, is a lot more sneaky, pushes back, fights back, and the borderline parent ends up just really strongly disliking that kid and treating the others better. And so it ends up creating just this sibling warfare. The kids are never able to really get along or befriend each other or trust each other because it just the parent kind of creates this dynamic. I've seen it many, many times. It's really troubling and it's really alarming. But they can't take criticism or make corrections. If you've ever attempted to ask a BPD parent to do anything different, that what happens, they make it about them. How dare you criticize me? And it's like, well, I'm really asking you to do this because for the betterment of your children, and they can't get around it that they are being criticized. Again, this is why we lump that. This is why they look a lot like narcissists, is because everything's about them. I'm concerned about your child. I think if you do this or that, your child will benefit more. How dare you criticize me is often the response. But again, like I said here, they just take it as a personal attack and seeing as something that will help or benefit their children. I just don't know that I have really encountered a BPD parent that their behavior, verbally they might say, oh yeah, hey, you know, I'm worried about this or that, the other, and I'm really invested in helping my child, but their behavior doesn't match up. They rarely really actually physically engage in helping the child. They may say the right things in the moment, but on the back end, nothing really happens or changes. It's really difficult to give them any criticism or ask them to take corrections. Oftentimes, you know, even if to your face, they're like, oh, thanks for the information. They'll go home and have a meltdown. So this is one of my biggest concerns too. They make poor relationship choices. I'm going to give an example. I hear this all the time. Okay. So one thing about those who have borderline, being alone is it's very difficult for them to not be in a relationship. I have seen exceptions to this, but they tend to latch on to whoever they can as quickly as they can. They hate being alone. They hate not being in a relationship. I'm honestly not exactly sure what it is about that, but they will tend to latch on to anybody as long as it happens fast. They would rather be in the worst relationship in the world than be alone sometimes. But unfortunately, this translates into some really bad things happening for the kids. I have heard many accounts and many instances where the BPD parent brings home a new partner without even just knowing them for short amounts of time. You might have just met him yesterday, brings them home, and that person ends up abusing the kids in some way, shape, or another. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to kids or even adults that borderline parent brought home a partner and that partner abused me sexually, physically, emotionally, all of the above. And because BPD parents really have a hard time taking any criticism, like if you brought it up and you're like, hey, your partner is abusing your children, the response as usual is, I can't believe you, how dare you criticize my parenting? It's always the same kind of frustrating thing. And so I have the stories I've heard about kids being sexually abused by some partner that came home with a borderline parent who didn't vet the person at all, who made a quick emotional choice. It's awful. It's terrifying. I mean, it tears you up. It rips your heart out sometimes. So yeah, this list is definitely more concerning to me than the other one that I did, but they're often guilty of parental alienation. I know someone who is previously diagnosed as borderline and no longer is. She's essentially integrated or recovered. She still has traits, but she's definitely come a long ways. She disagrees with me on this one. She does not believe that this is a borderline thing. I just completely disagree. I've seen it so many times. Usually in divorce situations, the BPD parent cannot tolerate their children showing love or affection to the person that betrayed them or left them or abandoned them. And so they're extremely guilty of parental alienation. I have seen them fabricate lies. I've seen, and maybe to them, here's the thing. One of the questions I saw online one day is, do people with borderline lie? And here's a question that I posed in response is, if they believe that they're telling the truth, is it lying? And some people say yes, and some people say no. And I think everything is relative. I think everything is a gray area. So here's the thing about borderline. Feelings are facts. If they feel like it's true, it is true. If they feel like their ex-husband or ex-wife is a child molester, then they are, regardless of evidence. I've asked many, many people with borderline to please show me the evidence. Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence. I need evidence. And their evidence is, well, I feel like it is. Okay, feelings are not facts. Okay, I'm going to say it a million times. Feelings are not facts. And so, you know, if they break off a relationship, they've been abandoned, and that person goes to ultimate villain status. They're on the villain list. They do all the horrible things under the sun, and they will tell this to the kids. I've seen this where, you know, your dad is abusive. He's an alcoholic. He's a child molester. I mean, I've heard it all, guys. I've heard all of the above. It's gone the other way too, where I've seen a narcissistic parent do the same thing to his ex-wife. She's a horrible person in every way, shape, or form. Narcissistic parents are extremely guilty of parental alienation as well. And finally, number 5, you can't tolerate mistakes, specifically from the children. Kids make mistakes. Kids are going to make messes. They're going to destroy your furniture. They're going to destroy your property. They're going to lose things. They're going to have bad grades. You're going to say things you don't like. They're going to do things you don't like. You're going to tell them to go to bed, and they're going to say no. That's how kids are. And the borderline and or narcissistic parents have zero threshold for this. They basically kind of expect kids to just be perfect, 100% perfect all the time. They can get extremely controlling in really, really nasty ways, just to kind of try to rein the children in, and the children end up trying to take back the control in negative ways, like cutting. There's often like a food issue. I can't even count the number of times I've seen a kid. Show me a kid. This might be a different topic. You show me a kid with an eating issue, I'll show you a kid with a controlling parent. It's just one of the ways that the kids try to get control back. But you know, kids make mistakes. They have meltdowns. They say no. They make messes. And the borderline / narcissistic parents, they come unglued. They absolutely come apart. The lack of emotional control, the lack of ability to maintain one's emotions really comes out on the kids in these circumstances. And kids, I've heard of kids and seen situations where kids endure these massive, massive rageful outbursts over pretty relatively small things. And what that ends up doing is that it creates severe anxiety disorders in the kids. They end up not being able to tolerate any of their own mistakes either. So, I mean, they even do small things or make tiny mistakes, and they are having meltdowns because they're anticipating a huge explosion. So I'm going to wrap it up. We are running out of time on this one. So yeah, thanks for watching. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time.